Welcome back, artists. In this video, I'm going to paint these Merry Christmas stockings. As you can see, I've already done the layout. I initially did the layout in pencil using just a regular number 2 pencil, this mechanical pencil, put the layout where I thought I wanted it, erased as appropriate, and then I came back over with my inks. In this case, I used 2 different inks. One was from this pen, which is a Speedball 1mm point pen that did everything except the lettering. This ink is water soluble, so I know it's going to run with my watercolor paints when I put it on later. You'll notice that I did have an accident here where I came back in and I put the ink over the pencil lines, and then as I erased the pencil lines, my ink was still wet, and so it smudged on me. This to me is not a problem. As you get more experience and confident in your painting, these type of little mistakes aren't going to be a problem for you. I can work with the paints and cover up the mistakes, and you won't recognize it. The other ink that I used is this Prismacolor permanent ink. It's archival ink. It's permanent ink. That's what I did the lettering with, the Merry Christmas lettering with. I did this for a specific reason. I want the lettering to be very visible, and when I go over it with my watercolor paints, I don't want the ink to run. The other areas I can work with, and it'll run and smudge a little bit, but it'll look uniform, so it'll look fine in the final piece. Now, with that in mind, let's start with our watercolor paints. Customarily, in watercolors, we start with our lightest colors and then move towards our darks. Our lightest colors would be the white areas of the stockings. To show white, I need to make it three-dimensional, so I oftentimes will show the shadow side as being blue, which is what I'm going to do here. Outline it a little bit like this. I'm left-handed, as you can see, and so keeping in mind where my source of light is, which will be off the page at 10 o'clock. My shadow side would then be on the lower right-hand side. If I were a right-hander, that would be the opposite. My source of light would be off the page at 2 o'clock, and then my shadows would be on the corresponding lower left corners of the various objects. Now, as long as we keep in mind where the object should look just fine. So I'll enjoy my time here painting in the white areas of the stockings here. Now I'll add a little cobalt blue here, touch it here and there. I very often use the cobalt with the sky blue, which is really cerulean blue. It's very close to cerulean blue. Now there's the whites on the candy canes up here. I'll do the same thing on the shadow side here. Putting in the shadows is what makes the object look three-dimensional. Okay, that looks good for a start. Let's have some fun with our stockings. Beautiful bright red stockings. There we go. Notice since I used permanent ink, I can brush right through them, and the lettering does not fade, does not run with the water that is in the paint. Now, it will a little bit out here on the edges where I used water-soluble ink. I'm just being mindful of that. I'm painting in a loose fashion, and by painting loosely, I mean that I'm willing to paint outside the lines, just like that. I do that intentionally. As long as, and that look, I can get away with that, and it looks fine as long as I'm careful about adjusting my values, which is the relative light and darkness of each color. Now I just put on a light bright red, which is scarlet cadmium, and now I'll drop in a little bluer, again on the shadow side, color to make it look three-dimensional. I'm just going to let myself have a little bit of fun with the color here. I'll let it run off the page here a little bit. This will help stylize the painting. Okay, let's make the other stocking very similar. We'll do the same thing over here. All right, same idea. Put the scarlet cadmium in first. Touch the shadow side. Okay, now come back a little bit with and intentionally paint outside the lines like we did over on the other stocking. Let it run a little bit. Okay, there's our stockings. Let's do the red candy canes up here too, those stripes on the candy canes. I do this fine line with the corner of my flat brush, just with the point of it there. All right, now I'll need to leave those alone because you can see they're very, very wet. If I come back in again, it's going to smudge on me, which I really don't want to do. So let's work on items I've got stuffed into the top of the stockings. Pick some other primary colors. Let's use yellow. Make the same gift for each child that would have the stocking hung up. And then I haven't used a green yet, so this is Viridian, which is a beautiful blue. Make sure I get the shadow side, and then the part facing the light, just touch a little bit with a brush so it pulls the green into the shadow area. And I'll try to strengthen up the shadow side of the green. There we go. Nice strong green on the shadow side. Okay. Now, as I've drawn it, the stockings are hung on a mantle above a fireplace. I'm just going to do those as a something like a wooden mantle. This is called negative painting, when you paint around an object like I'm doing with these Christmas stockings. I want to try to avoid the halo effect, which is a white space, so a lot of times I will touch it, knowing that it will bleed into my painting. But as long as I do it uniformly throughout the piece, it should look fine at the end when I'm done. And the human eye will connect all the shapes that I want it to connect. And here's the bottom side. That was raw sienna, the color that I just used. This is quinacridone burnt orange, which is a beautiful dark brownish color. It's a wonderful color. All right, so that's the bottom side of the mantle. Okay, I'll let that run a little bit too. Run that down. Okay, actually touch it a little bit. And there would be cast shadows from the stockings onto the mantle. So this I'm just dropping in very loosely. And then I'm letting it intentionally run with the paper. I'm doing this because there's a big area of yellow, that raw sienna, and this will help break it up a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting to the human eye. And I'm not worried about the fact that it runs in there. I could lift it off a little bit, but that doesn't really matter to me. Actually, I kind of like the stronger color there. Okay, so since I should have some loose background up here, the stripes on my candy canes look to be mostly dried, so I can put in some type of background here. I think I'll try to stick with something like maybe a little bit lighter yellow, like a brick fireplace. Keeping with the vertical theme that I have below the mantle, I'm going to stick with a vertical theme up here too. And that uniformity will help tie the piece together. Don't have to use much, just a little bit will go a long ways. I'm painting this more like a greeting card would be painted, as opposed to a fine art piece. Put some, just to keep it interesting, right here at the, and then a little bit more yellow down here. Okay. Now as I'm looking at it, my eye wants to go to these brighter white pieces. I really want it to go to this lettering. So I'm going to strengthen up the lettering a little bit. And to do that, I'm going to use a darker blue. In this case, a Prussian blue. But first, I'll check with the back of my finger to see how dry the paper is. And yes, the paper is dry right at this lettering. I can use the tip of my brush end on like this. Again, keeping in mind that I'm painting a fast and loose manner. I'm not too worried if I'm not just exactly perfect with my lettering with my brush like this. The main thing is that I just get it close, and then trying to use the very corner of the bristles to strengthen up the lettering a little bit. Okay, now to keep in theme with a little bit of blue, I'm going to use the same Prussian blue across the bottom of the stocking right here. The reason I'm doing this is this blue is going to help pull the eye down into the stocking, and you'll see the lettering that matches with this blue, which is what I want it to do. I'm trying to control the direction in which the eye looks. A little bit underneath here where the shadow from the white body of the stocking across the bottom of the mantle. All right, I like that. I think that's wonderful. Okay, there's our finished piece, everyone. First we did the pencil sketch, the layout of our piece. Then we went over that in two different inks, a permanent ink that was non-water soluble for the lettering, a water-soluble ink for everything else. We erased off all the pencil lines, and then we came back over it with our watercolor paints. Stuck with primarily the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, as you can see, and just a very simple composition. Thank you so much. Please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you. Bye.